Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today, we have with us David Womack. He's a former pastor, pastored in different places throughout the United States, but for many years, David, I think it's like 16 years you've been working for D6 Family Ministries. And
That's
David,
right.
I want to thank you, number one, for your work as a pastor, but also your work at D6. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Glad to be with you. Thank you.
Now, I believe either at D6 or at the National, I've heard you talk about the importance of curriculum. And so there's probably a lot of our listeners that are thinking, hey, why do I need to utilize a curriculum? And there may even some that say, I don't need a curriculum like in their classes or in Sunday school. They say, we just go by the Bible. And so help our listeners understand, why is it that it's a good idea to utilize a curriculum?
Okay. Well, first of all, you can't argue against we're just teaching the Bible. I mean, that's a good thing, but we can ask what is the most effective way we can do that. And so we always want to be looking for tools that can help us in what we're doing. And in conversations about curriculum like we're having here, we're usually talking about in a church initiative, like a Sunday school or small group ministry that's going on. And so that's a different conversation than a few people wanting to do a Bible study. But even there, something that guides you along is very helpful to have. Two advantages of using a curriculum is, first of all, it provides a lesson plan. And it's just a plan, a logical plan to cover the key points and application of the passage that you're trying to cover. It also provides a path and a progression through a study. It gives you a logical way of following through a book of the Bible or a particular biblical subject that you're going to deal with. Most curriculums have what they call a scope and a sequence. The scope just tells you what you're going to be covering. The sequence tells you when and how you're going to be covering that. And that helps in a lot of ways. You can always, you know where you're going, and it helps in your planning ahead. It also helps a teacher. We all kind of gravitate to those pet passages we like and those subjects that we feel that we can do the best job of communicating. But we do need a plan that can help us, cover more of the counsel of God.
So I think what I'm picking up from you is a curriculum is good for students because you're talking about the scope and sequence. There's a plan, there's a process, almost like what we experience in school or college. So it's like you've got to know this information, and this information ties into this. But also, if I'm hearing you correctly, the last part you said was it helps you're really implying it helps the teacher. So
It is.
I gravitate toward the things that I really like to talk about, but I'm ending up by using a curriculum. I'm learning things that I might not have known otherwise. And it helps me as a teacher to stretch as well as the students stretch.
True. A curriculum is just good for a teacher. Every teacher may not have the skill set to build a lesson from scratch, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But they could take a good curriculum and just follow through because it's going to be laid out to walk a teacher through the lesson, how to cover, the key points that need to be covered, how to lead a student into application of that passage, and they always know where they're going next. So a curriculum is just good for a teacher. It is a great help, but it is also good for the student
Good for both.
because a good Bible-based curriculum is going to do a couple of things. It's going to help a student develop a biblical worldview. It's just a biblical framework of how to think about life. It's also going to enhance their biblical literacy, where they're not just learning the stories of the Bible, but they learn the grand story of the Bible and how the parts make a whole. And that's very important. When a curriculum utilizes discussion and interaction, it also helps a student develop critical thinking skills, which are very important. That we know how to think critically, biblically about the things that we encounter with life. And it also helps us understand how to make application, how to internalize and contextualize what we're learning from God's word, and how to live that out. To borrow a biblical term, it can make one wise unto salvation.
Ah,
And it also, it teaches us how to live out a redeemed life. So not only is a curriculum good for a teacher, it's also very good for a student.
so I can't help, David, but when I listen to you to think a lot about school and college, and you're saying there's discussion, it also sounds like curriculum, because you're using it, it's not just for that Sunday or whenever the class meets. In other words, sometimes there's some preparation, just like there is for students for a class. Sometimes there's follow up on what we've discussed that last week. So what you're saying is there's learning that continues outside the classroom. And so you really, okay, you've sold me. We need a curriculum. Now, you probably know this. It seems like it's cool now for churches to have their own curriculum, that they design it often around their sermon series or whatever. So, but you're in the curriculum business, if you will, per se. So tell me why it's a good idea maybe to not do that, to do my own curriculum as a pastor, and maybe to utilize a D6 curriculum.
Well, we've had that conversation many times with some churches, especially larger churches. It would require a staff with broad experience and training to pull together a good comprehensive curriculum. And so the question boils down to, do you want to be paying multiple people to be reinventing the wheel for you, building a curriculum, or would you rather them spend their time doing ministry with the people of their church and the community? That's what it boils down to. What do you want the people to be doing? Because it is a massive effort. We have writers and editors that have been trained and vetted, and it just requires a massive amount of work to create what we would say a comprehensive curriculum that would include a scope and sequence, and help guide through those things we talked about earlier. And most of our churches are not equipped to try to pull anything like that off.
So let's unpack that for just a little bit. So, like the curriculum that you all put out, first off, you mentioned scope and sequence. So there's that big, it's the big poster board, I guess it is, that shows what happens across the different months, the themes, the topics that you're looking at. And so there's a team that's gone and they've designed and they've thought that through so that the student is getting different information all throughout the year. There's someone involved in that. There's someone involved in the outlines. There's people involved in the writing. More than one, isn't it?
It is.
And then there's people that do the editing. And in your situation, you're creating a finished product that's printed nicely, it's designed nicely. By the time you finish a curriculum and it get the church, I can't even number. You might be able to do that. The number of hands and eyes that have seen that, and so you're probably less like you're going to end up, multitude of counselors situation where you've just got a much better product.
Yeah, you would not want a curriculum, and again, we're talking about a church-wide curriculum initiative. You would not want a curriculum that was put together by one or two people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would just want the thought that goes into it, the expertise that goes into it to be a little broader. And so it is a massive undertaking. And also with our curriculum, you can be assured that you're going to be getting, you're going to stay within biblical orthodoxy, and you're also going to be true to Free Will Baptist doctrine.
Mm-hmm. So it's really, you could say, okay, it's good for learning. It's a better situation for learning. But as you alluded to earlier, it's also a big part of stewardship. Why do I reinvent the wheel when, and probably not going to be able to put the hours that were placed in that curriculum when we really need to be doing something else. So,
right.
And
we're kind of proud of our curriculum in a good way.
In a good way.
We've gotten a lot of awards from
Evangelical
Evangelical
Press
Press
Association.
Association,
Yeah.
or a quality product. It looks good. It's got good content. And we take pride in that. We work hard to produce a good product that will serve the church well.
So a listener's like, I don't know what that is. Well, that's Christianity Today, Answers in Genesis. Just go down the line. All basically the leaders in publishing look at your products, and they are looking at your product and comparing it to others. It's a way to try to build each other up and lift each other up. But they're saying this is good quality stuff, and that's why it wins awards.
Yeah.
That's good,
We're
David.
very blessed. We have some very talented editors. We have a pool of great writers. We have top-notch designers. Uh, God has blessed us to be able to pull that together.
So I'm listening. Okay, I got you, David. I want to do that. Walk me through, as a pastor, as a layperson, what do I need to do to try to implement the D6 curriculum into my church?
One of the most important uh, points of emphasis for any church initiative, you need to have your pastor on board.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is the best cheerleader for anything that's going to be happening in the church. Pastors are very busy. They have to delegate a lot. They cannot carry it all by themselves, but they do need to know what's going on. They need to have their thumbprint on it, so to speak. But they need to champion that. They can then delegate somebody that can take lead on it. But it's so important that you have a pastor buy in, and the pastor has a vision for it. And then the church typically will follow, when the pastor, when he casts a vision for that, especially in using D6 curriculum, which is going to be a move to a more generational discipleship philosophy.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So a pastor's like, well, how do I do that? So one of the things you can do is you can look at the topics that are covered from week to week, and maybe the pastor teaches a class, maybe they don't, but they can promote that, can't they? And actually, a lot of those topics are things that are appealing to the public, right?
Yeah.
And so can talk of it in that way. One of the things you all talk a lot about is how the themes begin all the way with the children, all the way to adults. If you're a pastor and you're trying to encourage people to participate in your small groups, that's one of your selling points, if you will, about why people would go to small groups and so forth. So there's a lot of ways they can support and champion the curriculum, as you say.
Right. We have what we call family alignment in the curriculum, which means all the age groups are going to be covering the same theme or topic. Preschool are going to be, they're not going to be tackling a new concept every week, but elementary and up are going to be on the same theme, tracking together every week, which really does a lot for a church, because people from all age groups, what each other is studying. And so anyone in the church can be interacting with anyone from any age. We at church, we talk about sports and the weather and everything else, and that's all fine. But isn't it good if we can have a conversation of some spiritual depth to it, built off of what we've learned in our classes, what we're covering in our daily devotions, that we're able to just engage together, talking about what we're learning from God and His Word.
I love that. So like you're saying, Titus 2, older people mentor or disciple the younger people. So if I'm an older person and I take a younger person from the church hunting or fishing, I've got a sense of what they studied last week, because that's what we studied, right?
Yeah.
And so you're saying have those kinds of conversations with them. And even like you're getting coffee and donuts or coffee and fruit, at the church, you can have conversations because you know what they study.
Right. And you've got people in the church that may never be a teacher, like, in front of a class, but they can be engaged in mentoring and ministry. And so the D6 curriculum and the devotional study guides are a great tool that facilitates that in a church.
Okay. So talk to our listeners a little bit about the devotional study guides, because a student goes, they've got their lesson, but they can really put those devotional study guides into practice to keep learning going.
Exactly. They're age appropriate, so every age group has their own magazine. And for the younger ones, it's kind of cool to have your own, study guide, your own magazine. And it's got some other activities in it, puzzles and things for fun. But it helps develop the discipline of a daily time with God and His Word. There have been several studies done. Vern Bingston, Barna did some. I think the Pew Research Council identifying 4 factors that facilitate spiritual growth and continuing in the faith. 2 of those are Bible engagement, personal Bible engagement outside of church, and then having spiritual conversations, sharing your faith. Our curriculum and the devotional study guides facilitate the Bible engagement and then engaging with each other around God's Word and what we're learning. It's designed to encourage families where there are children in the home, that parents can be involved in those conversations. And we include some tools and tips in the parents' devotional study guide to help them know how to engage those conversations at home.
So the younger person, let's say a teenager, they're getting a magazine. I think it's called The Brink, and or maybe that's the young adults, but they're getting their magazine, and there's a daily reading, right, that they can participate in. And what you're saying is the adults have their magazine as well. So there are discussion starters, there are things they can ask them when they're eating or driving down the road to try to reinforce the lessons through the week.
See, and that just gets back to Deuteronomy 6.
Mm-hmm.
When you're rising up, when you're lying down, when you're going by the way. And it just gives a tool to help engage those conversations at home. And again, we have the benefit of personal engagement ourselves. A devotion is not a lot when you're thinking about, the breadth of it. You're reading a verse or two, maybe 3 or 4 verses, but a devotion, the essence of a devotion is it gives me a time where I hear from God, from His Word. I read a little commentary on His Word, so I'm able to digest that. And then probably I would have a minute of prayer. So I hear from God, I talk to God, and I meditate on what God is telling me. If we could do that every day, it'd make a big difference in our lives, especially when you think about everyone in the family doing it, everyone in the church doing it. It's just a great dynamic.
And you're saying it goes along really with the lesson. In other words, it carries it through all throughout the week. And the research you just cited shows that it works, right?
Yeah.
That Bible engagement is the key to what some researchers call the good life, because they're following the Lord. That's powerful stuff, David.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm on board. I can go to d6family.com. I could call you as well. And
Yeah.
there's even folks at D6 Family that if my association wanted to get on board with this, try to really put some of this into practice, you all would help them with that as well, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Easy email to remember is wecanhelp@d6family.com.
We can help at d6family.com. And then, hey, check out the website, right? d6family.com, all the information, all the tools that are there. And you have a lot of tools that are free as well that they could take and put into practice to enhance what they're doing at church and in their own lives.
True. And someone could get started in 3 easy steps. You just determine how many age groups you have, how many classes you want to have, how many are in each class, order the teaching essentials for the teachers for each class, order the devotional study guides for each student in the class. You're ready to roll.
That's great. That's great. Well, David, hey, thank you for taking the time to kind of unpack this for us today and give us a good sense of where to start. We appreciate what you and D6 Family are doing, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, my friend.
Thank you very much.
We want to thank you, our listener. We want to encourage you to take this podcast, share it with someone that would benefit from it. Remember that every little thing we do, it really does matter. It really does help. It helps us to advance the kingdom of Christ. When we all work together, even if it's just a little bit, we truly are better together. Thank you for joining us today.